Okay, my name is Kathy Montanisi. I'm with the College Board, the AccuPlacer program. We just wanted to welcome you and thank you for attending today's Site Manager training. I'm joined by my colleague Deb Anderson, and we will be walking through the presentation with you today. I think that it is loaded for you already, so you'll be able to have it as soon as this is done, or I think you can download it now. Jump in if I've got that wrong. But we really want to encourage you to ask questions along the way. I'll stop periodically and check with Deb, who will be managing the chat function for me. So if you have any questions, please drop those into the Q&A or chat functionality, and we will address those along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Myself, Kathy, and Deb will be presenting to you today. So what we're going to go over today, folks, is a few just quick short updates from the Idaho DOE, a little bit on how to order or request your units. We want to talk to you about the account structure of the Idaho DOE AccuPlacer account. Then we want to make sure you feel comfortable with adding users and how the navigation panel works. We will talk to you about ACT certification that is required for both you and your proctors. And then we wanted to make sure that we left you with resources both for educators and for your students. And then, as I mentioned before, along the way, we will take your questions. So please feel free, there are no crazy questions. So jump in with anything that you're unfamiliar with or unsure about, or have a comment or concern. So just some quick updates. The college entrance exam grad requirement waived for the class of 2021. And you can see the 3 bullets there. That includes summer graduates and juniors graduating early. Your district may have kept this requirement as a local requirement, so please clarify with administration before assuming it has been waived for students. And then the waiver does not affect the current juniors. And then they want you to continue to hold IEP meetings and amend IEPs for students for whom the AccuPlacer is appropriate prior to them taking the actual test, and then submit a request to become an AccuPlacer site manager. And this is a link, a live link that you can click on, and there's a quick form that you can fill out to request for your high school to become a site manager or to switch it to someone else. So these are all updates from the DOE. So I'm going to stop there and see, Deb, did any questions come in yet before we actually get started?
No, Kathy, there's not any in there.
Okay, awesome. So let's take a look at the AccuPlacer account structure. I'm a very visual person, so I think it just helps to kind of see a picture of what the account looks like. So what we've got is the DOE serves as the institutional administrator. That is the highest permission level within an account, and we call it for short IA, is how we refer to that. Underneath that then, or attached to that, are all of the different high schools throughout Idaho who have requested to be a high school test site. So, and the reason that we like to show you this is so that you can rest assured that your data is kept separate from all of the other high schools. So it's contained within your test site. But what that does is that allows for us to keep set up certain settings at that IA level. So logging in as the IA, we can create what we call your test packages so that they stay consistent across all of the high schools. That also then allows for very quick access to reports and data. And it also means that you don't have to take the time to create these reports and send them into the DOE. They already have that at their fingertips. If you have a need to try out any type of like screen reader software, or you just have, you'd like to take a look, there is something that we call the demo site, and you can request access to that for practice purposes only. Excuse me. So let's take a look at the site manager role and some of the different capabilities that that site manager has. We call the site manager SM for short, and they are responsible for managing that one individual testing site for their district or high school. They also have the ability to create site-specific users, create student vouchers that are used for testing, and also to put custom messages onto their particular site that is just for their students. Site managers also have the ability to edit student profiles. We know often students, if you're not using the voucher system and you're having the student enter in their own information, if you're doing like a one-off with a student, they sometimes can mix up their last name for their first name or vice versa. They maybe put in, make an error when they're typing in their birth date. So you're able to go in and edit any of those student records. The site manager also then has access to what we call AccuPlacer companion materials. Companion are all of our accommodated formats, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The site manager then has access to generate site-specific reports. So they are able to pull data from their high school or district only. The one thing that a site manager by design cannot do, and this is for security purposes, with that login, that username and password, if they log in with their site manager credential, they cannot administer a test. So we never want you to use that login and then set a student down at that same computer. So that is a security function. So if you are a site manager who also is going to administer a test, you will have two different usernames and passwords. Then there are two different proctor or test administration roles that we have. One is called a proctor reporter and the other is called a proctor. And we wanted to make sure, site managers, that you knew the difference between these two roles so that when you are adding or creating users, you have the best information that you to make a decision about who you should assign to which role. So if you have a proctor or a test administrator that you would like them to be able to also pull reports, you are going to assign that person a proctor reporter rights. A proctor reporter can administer tests. They can create the student testing vouchers if you need their assistance with that. They can also help edit those student profiles if there are any mistakes. They do have access to the companion or the special format accommodated materials. And then they also can generate any of the site-specific reports. So whether that's just pulling an individual student record or whether that is looking at a particular date range to get all of the information from students, the proctor reporter, if you need them to have those capabilities, you would make them a proctor reporter when you are creating their credential. If you, however, have someone who is going to just administer a test, that's really going to be their only role that they're going to do for you, then you would create them or make them a proctor. A proctor can administer a test. They also can assist with creating those vouchers and editing student profiles, but they cannot run any of the reports. So they do not have the capability to log in and pull any of the reports. So hopefully that helps you when you are going in and setting up your users to tell the difference between when you should make someone a proctor reporter and when you should make someone a proctor.
Kathy?
Yes, Deb.
There was one question, and Amy asked if we recommend that they sit in on the proctor training this afternoon as well as the site manager training.
I think if you're able to, I think that would be, there might be some overlap. We apologize for that. But if you are going to be responsible for proctor reporters and reporters, which the site managers are, so if that's your role, I think it would be a good idea if you have time, or I think we're recording these. So if you can attend, you could also just listen to the recording.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. I think this is probably the main part of the platform that a site manager uses, and it's called the user tab. So when we refer to the navigation panel, when you log into your screen, on the left-hand side, you will see this black kind of bar going down the left-hand side. And this tab, the user tab, is really used for several of your administrative tasks. One thing that you'll need to know when you are requesting those units is your site profile or your site ID. So you're able to get to that by clicking on users, manage profiles, and then site profile, and that will give you your site ID. The user profiles you will use to add users. So when you're creating those proctors or proctor reporters, or someone who's just going to be a reporter and look at results, that's the link that you will click on is user profiles. The bulk upload of users, if you are a school that has multiple, I would say 10 or more that you're going to be adding users for, we've created this new bulk upload of users. It's a template that you fill out, and it really does speed up the process. So it's very helpful when you're adding multiple users at one time. The student profiles is something that you would go to when you need to edit those student records, as I mentioned earlier. If students have, or if you have, when you're creating their voucher, accidentally entered in something that is not correct, it is changeable within the AccuPlacer account. And then site managers have the ability to add those custom messages. Custom messages really are helpful, folks, for kind of information that you want to tell the student prior to them taking the test. And then there's also a message you can use at the end of testing, kind of to tell them, you know, thank you, you've completed the test, please sit quietly, or if you want them to get up and exit the room. So you can kind of tell them exactly what you'd like to do. Because the tests are untimed, so students will finish at different times. So the site profile, the very first one under this users tab, like I said, this is where you will go to find that site ID. And so what I've done is we've just highlighted for you where that site ID is. And then you can see the hierarchy, the College Board, the DOE, and then the name of the high school. So when you are asked for your site ID, which you will, I believe, when you are requesting those units, that's where you would locate your number. Also want to point out to you, if you are a person that is a site manager and you are also a proctor reporter, the screens look the same. So when you log in, we really encourage you to just take a moment up in the upper right-hand corner to just check. You should see your name and then your role, and you just want to make sure that you're logged in the way that you intended or you thought you were logging in. The next tab then, user profiles, is where you will go to add anyone that is going to be that from your institution that you'd like to have credentials to be able to log into your test site. The first thing you're going to do after you click on user profiles is you will click on that add button, and it's about halfway down your screen. That will then bring you to, or will pull up this screen where you will be able to choose the user type. So from that drop down menu, you would either pick proctor reporter or proctor, whichever one you intend for them to have, enter in their information. You choose the username, and we really encourage you to use a naming convention that will keep it very straightforward and simple for your users, especially if they're going to have multiple usernames. So something like if I was doing mine, I would say K, my last name Montanisi _ SM, or K Montanisi _ PR for proctor reporter. Then the user then will receive an email after you've completed this process, and we'll show you what that's going to look like. So you choose their username. As I said, this is an example of using their first name and then .proctor reporter. So again, trying to keep it something that really helps them remember which way that they're logging in. You'll choose that user type from a drop-down menu. You'll enter in their first and last name. You will choose for them the username. And then the next thing you want to do is click to open up the next screen. So you can see that little green circle with the plus in it. When you click that, now you're going to enter in the demographic information for this user. So the demographic information screen will open. If you click the little check mark in the box in the use default address, it will populate for you so that you do not have to do that. But then for the address, then what you will need to enter in is going to be the institution email address for this particular user, their phone number, and then the to and from dates that you want them to be active. So if you have particular dates at your institution, you know from February 1st to February 15th, you're going to be testing, you can limit this user to only be able to access during that time. We've found that there are some common error messages when creating users, and so we wanted to present you with what those error messages are and then some solutions to them. So the first one that we see common is if you're creating a new user and you get this error message, you can do the following. So in this particular, I apologize, it should be login as site manager. You will click on users, manage profile, and then institution profile. and add the email domain and save. And let me back that up. This is something that you're going to have to send actually to the DOE to do this for you, but I don't believe that you should run into this problem because all of you should have your email domain entered in. If you do though, if you run into this message, this is something that you would want to send to the DOE. They are the only ones that will be able to correct that for you. The second one though that you may get is if you're creating a new user and it tells you that this username is already being used. That's very common because it's searching across the entire AccuPlacer community, not just for your state. So if that happens, it means that username has already been taken, and so you'll need to add something to the username to make it unique. After you've created a user, after a site manager has created a user, that user will receive an email from NoReply. The email will include their username, so we'll tell them what their username is, and then a link to create their own password. When you click on that new user login link and follow these steps, that will complete the process. So this is what the email looks like that the new user will receive. Again, it will show them their username, and then they will click on that yellow button, new user login. That is going to walk them through this process, and it's a 4-step process. So first, they will put in their first and last name and the username that they received in the email. Second, they will read and accept the license agreement. Third, they'll be asked some security questions in case they forget what their password is. And then they'll be asked to set their password. So just want to stop there, Deb, and see if anybody had any questions about creating a user, a Proctor reporter or a Proctor, or you might add a new site manager if you want to have someone share that duty with you. Any questions about creating users, Deb?
They have a question about, okay, so being a small school, usually 8 to 10 students a year only take the AccuPlacer. Would you recommend a site manager and Proctor or the same person doing both?
You definitely can have the same person doing both. You don't have to have 2 separate people, and totally understand there's a lot of what we call one-person shows, if you will. One person is a site manager, and then they also are going to be the one that administers. That's perfectly allowable.
And then another person asked, and I think you've answered it, if there could be 2 site managers.
You can, and we actually recommend it if you're a larger school, especially. So in case you're not there, that if there are questions and they can move forward, so you absolutely can share those responsibilities with more than one person.
And then they're asking if we have a video of a site manager doing this, meaning add a user, etc. I think you're going to have me demonstrate that, so it would be in this recording.
We absolutely are, yes. So it will be captured in this recording.
Okay.
So we will walk you through. I agree, it's so much easier. We wanted you to have this as a takeaway so that you'll be able to print this and actually have the steps in front of you, but there's nothing, I don't think, that can replace actually seeing it live, so we're definitely going to show that to you.
And that's all the questions I have right now.
All right, very good. So moving down the rest of this tab, we have some suggestions for keeping users' accounts current. So you would navigate to the user profile. So you can see we've highlighted underneath with the red line. So when you click on that, again, your user profile screen appears. The next thing you're going to do, though, is not enter in any information, but rather just click search. What that does is that's going to bring up everyone that you have within your test site. Then what you're able to do is take a quick look and see, are there any users that should be deleted, any that should be added? I think this is especially important for you folks now because it's been a little while since you administered AccuPlacer. It could very well be that whoever, when your test site was active before, they're gone. So you really want to take a look and see who needs to just kind of, we call it clean up your users and delete any that shouldn't be there. And then of course you will add any that will be working with you this year. And then there's a way that you can update their account active dates. So again, you are going to have, because it's been a couple years since you've been into your site, you're able to put a check mark in front of the username. Once you've got your list down to these are the people that will be able to access our AccuPlacer platform this year, then you've got your list. Then put that check mark next to username. You can see that blue check mark, and that's going to highlight or choose everyone. The next thing you're going to do is click on Update Account Active Dates. That will bring up a calendar for you, and you are able to all at once mark the dates that you would like your users to have access. So whether that's just for a couple of months, a couple of weeks, or if you'd like to bump it out for a 12-month period, that's the longest you could choose. You could do it for everyone all at one time. It's a time saver. So again, this slide, folks, is just really the steps, step by step by step, for site managers to add users. So again, we wanted you to have this as a takeaway, but we'll have Deb go live at the end of this to actually show you what that's going to look like. So moving down that navigation panel, the next line is student profiles. And I've mentioned that this is a place where you can go to edit records if you need to. So clicking on student profiles opens up this screen. It allows you to search for an individual student and then pull their ISR if you'd like to. That's kind of the quickest way. That's kind of my go-to when I'm looking just to pull. And ISR, folks, stands for Individual Score Report. So if you need to just come in and pull one report for a student, this is the quickest way to do it. It allows you to edit records. So as I mentioned previously, if they have anything in here that's wrong, their birth date, their last name, their ID, maybe that's off by a number, you're able to come to the student profiles and edit. And then you're also able to merge records if you have need to. If you have a student who previously tested, and then they tested again and they used a different ID number, let's say, you are able to merge those two test records together and choose one ID that you would like that's to be associated with that record moving forward. So we mentioned before about custom messages a little bit. Wanted to give you a little more detail about custom messages. So the first three that I've just highlighted with that red box, these are messages that you can customize, and these are the ones that would view during a student's test session. So you can give a student instruction message, you can give a welcome, an overall welcome to testing, and then as I mentioned before, a test completed and what you might want that student to do after they have completed their testing. The next three are messages you can put on documents that the student would receive. So there's a placement test score message, and there's a diagnostic test score message, and then there is a test voucher message. So again, these are messages you can customize with instructions that you maybe repeat over and over, and that way you can communicate to the students the same thing. So I'm going to stop here before we move. That was covering the user navigation panel and all of the different functions that a site manager has. So I want to stop and see if there were any additional questions, because that's probably where you're going to do the bulk of your work as a site manager, is within that tab.
Nothing new, Kathy.
Nothing new. Okay.
Yep, nope, nothing new.
Okay. All right. Very good. So a few years back, we put in place a certificate of test administration, wanting to make sure that we were really doing the best and everything we could to keep the integrity of the test for both, so that your student, when your students take the test, we know that the integrity of that test is being kept as best we can, and then also so that you're making sure that you're following the test security guidelines that we have in place, and you have a way of acknowledging that you've covered that material. So these are some common questions that we get, so we kind of put them into an FAQ for you, again, as a takeaway, but we get, how many certification versions are there? And there are two different versions, folks. One is that admin level. So in your case, the DOE is the institutional administrator, so the one you would have is site manager. And then the second version is one for proctor reporters and proctors. So we divided those two subjects. If you are that one person show, you would need to take two certifications. So if I serve as both roles, will I be required to take 2? And the answer is yes. How long will I have to complete the certification test? New users must complete ACTA before your credentials will be fully activated. So the very first time that you log in, the only thing you will see on the navigation panel is the link to the test and the link to the study materials for that test. After you've successfully completed the test, then you will have the full navigation panel available to you. And how many times can I take it? As many times as you need to. It's unlimited and open book, meaning you can have those training materials with you. And a score of 100% is needed to pass. A function that we've just added, or a feature I should say that we just recently added, is once you complete it, if you didn't hit 100%, it will show you which questions you got right and which questions you got incorrect. And then how long will the certification be good for? And it is good for 12 months. We require an annual renewal. And the reason for that is we do many upgrades to the AccuPlacer platform yearly. And so we want to make sure that you're staying up to date as best you can on all of those new functionalities that we add. And then how do I take the test? As I mentioned, you'll be able to log in for your first time when you receive your username and then create your password. The very first time you log in, you will see that link to the test and the link to the training materials. So we wanted to add here, this is coming from the DOE, how to request units. So to request units from Idaho SDE to administer the assessment for free, it is paid by the state. So you need to make that request to them. And what they've done is they've made a link to make it easy for you to request that. So you simply would click on this link and then fill out the information. And then due to budget constraints, one state paid opportunity, which involves 2 units per student with an IEP, is allowed. And this functionality would be done by the site manager. Then we wanted to kind of wrap up with the resources that are available to make sure that you're aware of all of them. So we have something new since the last time that many of you maybe administered AccuPlacer, that's called our student portal. So when we go live, we're going to show you that. There also is a free study web app that we want to make sure you're aware of for students to practice before they take the test. That student score share is a part of the student portal. They're able to transport or move their scores to other schools if need be. We added just in the last year a highlighter functionality, so we wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And we've added some tutorials also that you can direct your students to prior to their testing day that will instruct them on how to use that highlighter, how to use the calculators that are embedded within the platform. And then if anyone is unfamiliar with using a keyboard and mouse, we know there aren't as many these days, but we still do run into some. And so we wanted to make sure that we covered that in a tutorial as well. So you're able to access all of those tutorials for your students prior to their test session. So the student portal that Deb will be demonstrating in just a few minutes does not require a username and password. So you simply go to accuplacer.org. You do not have to put in a username or password up in that upper right-hand corner, but rather direct your students to click on Information for Students. When they do that, this screen will appear, and this allows them access to practice resources, which includes the study app, a way to retrieve their AccuPlacer score report and then share it with another institution if they choose to. And then the test center locator, you all will not use that. That is something for the higher ed folks. So we do have a study app. It's free for all students and it's web-based. We've got the link located there. And it's accessible to all students. They do need a valid email to create an account. They can access it on any device they have, computer, tablets, phones, and it can be used alongside screen readers so that they can practice that as well if they're going to use that during their test session. So this is what it looks like. Students will create an account. They have to put in a password and confirm that password. And then once they're in, they will choose from the list. You can see the different ones. You'll want to instruct your students to click on the AccuPlacer link. and then this will let them in to these free practice tests. It really does have the same look and feel as when they actually take their real test. So they choose that practice test, and then they can turn on something that we call Learn as you go, or they can just choose to go directly to practice test. If they choose or click on the Learn as you go, every time they answer a question, it's going to give them some rationale for why they got that question right. So it's confirming, yes, you knew it, and this is why you got it right, or it's going to give them some rationale for why they got it incorrect. Once they have done that a few times, what we generally recommend that students do is then turn that off, or rather click on the practice test, and then that turns off or doesn't include the Learn as you go. And now they're really kind of simulating what it's going to feel like to actually take their Accuplacer exam. Student Score Share is something we've added within the last year, and it allows students to first retrieve a copy of their individual score report, and then they can elect to email that to another institution if they are transferring to another school. We wanted you to be aware, myself and Deb, we're going to put up our contact information for you. Please reach out to us at any time. But if you can't get a hold of us, sometimes we are conducting webinars like this and we're not answering our phone, but you also can contact our help desk. It's located at the bottom of every screen on the platform. So even if you can't get logged in, it's on that first screen, accuplacer.org. And when you click on that link, you'll have the option to either phone in, do a live chat, or submit a ticket if you don't have time to do either of those. And we'll come back to our contact information and leave that up there for you, although you do have this, so I guess we don't have to. You've got it already in the presentation. So at this time, I just want to stop and see if there are any questions, and then we can go ahead and have Deb do the demo. Any more questions, Deb?
There are. So Jeff said in November, I got online, read the materials, took the test to be site manager. After this training, do I have to take the test again to have access?
No, if you just did it in November, that would be good for 12 months. So you are good.
Okay, the next question. I know nothing about Accuplacer. Could you please give me some background information regarding this assessment, such as what type of student is this test best suited for? And then second part of that question, are most colleges and universities accepting this test?
So let me start.
Yeah.
Let me start with the first part, Deb. So Accuplacer is a placement test, so it is used to determine whether or not a student has a reasonable chance of being successful in a entry-level course, in whether that's in most of your gen ed, so any of your Englishes, any kind of reading intensive course that they might take that first semester, or their math. So that is the purpose of the Accuplacer exam. The second part, they're asking, do universities and colleges accept this? We are in probably 3,000, a little over 3,000 universities and institutions. I think it is well recognized in many of your institutions, but the bottom line is you would need to check with that higher ed institution as to whether or not they accept these scores. Or was there more to the question, Deb?
There is. So is there a decision tree that we can use during an IEP meeting to decide if SAT or Accuplacer would be best for the student?
So to my knowledge right now, there is not a decision tree, but I think that's something we could take back and talk with leadership at SDE to see if that's something they would like to provide you as a resource.
And then the last part of her question, what does this test look like? Math, reading, science? Is it paper and pencil or just online?
So it is online, so there's the online version, and it also is computer adaptive. So the very first question that a student will receive will start at a medium level of difficulty. If they get that correct, it will get a little bit harder. If they get it incorrect, it'll get a little bit easier until it covers all of the content that is within that one assessment. It does cover math, reading, and writing are the 3 sections. I need to check with SDE to see which sections exactly they decided that they will be giving, but that is what is included within the platform. Did I answer everything, Deb, on that one?
Yes, there is what's called Companion, which is our pencil paper version. And if that becomes something that they want, then we could do that separately, Kathy.
Correct. I think we covered that in the Proctor too.
Yeah. All right. And folks, they're asking again about how many colleges accepted. You'd really just need to check with your either local area colleges, but we do have many across the country that accept it. Would you recommend a student practice this if they are unsure if they would like to take Accuplacer or SAT?
What was the question? Do we recommend they practice? Is that what it said?
Yes, use that study app.
Absolutely. We highly recommend that students look at that study app prior to and the tutorials so that they get familiar with all the different functionalities of taking the test online. So we absolutely recommend that they do that prior to taking their sitting for their actual exam.
And then there's a question about what are the units that are ordered. Maybe explain units.
Sure, let me explain that. Yeah, test units are the measurement that we use within Accuplacer. So what a test unit does is a reading comprehension test requires the consumption of 1 test unit. So you will order, you'll have to figure out how many students you believe you're going to test, how many tests you're going to give each of those students, and that's how many units you would request. If you overshoot that, it's not like you've used them. They're generic. You don't have to know, I need, 10 math and 10 reading. They're generic. They can just be covered. And if you don't use them, they'll just go back to SDE. So you don't have to worry about, being exact. I think they're just trying to get a close number of what you think you're going to use.
And then someone's asking if they should have received their email to log in, and I don't know if all the site managers have gotten their credentials or not.
I do not know that either. I think that's an SDE question, and she's not with us right now, so hopefully we'll be able to, I'll take that one down and we'll make sure that we answer that.
And then Scott and Gina, you both may be asking the same thing. Scott said, I've submitted my site manager request, that form that you were talking about, Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get into the live site, I think they're asking where to take the ACTA. I'll show you where you can take your certification test. And
Perfect.
yes, you will need to pass the certification test before you get full access to your credentials. And the next question is, does this replace does this test replace SAT for IEP students?
That is definitely a policy question that is not for me to answer. So I think that's going to have to be a takeaway that we ask SDE.
Oh, they're wondering if there's certain dates that you can take the Accuplacer.
So again, let me tell you how it functions. It is 24/7. It can be given anytime, but I'm not sure if SDE has any restrictions around those dates. So we'll have to check on that one as well.
Are there 3 levels of math to choose from like 2 years ago?
Apologies. Yeah, that's an SDE question as well. So we'll make sure all of these, I think the questions are being captured. So we'll be able to address all of these.
So do you want me to go live, Kathy?
If that was all the questions, yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
And then I believe somebody on y'all's side need to make it so I can share my screen. Taylor, I think that's you.
Yes, it is. Give me just one moment. I will make you the presenter.
Thank you. All right. And then it'll say, show my screen, and there we go. Okay. So you can see that, Kathy?
I'm still seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay. You're not seeing
Deborah.
AccuPlacer?
I see
I am not.
the AccuPlacer website.
You do?
Okay. Taylor says she's seeing it. Okay. So y'all see the AccuPlacer homepage?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So, I'm going to start since I'm logged in here. When you get your credentials, it's kind of nice. I created a site under y'all's account so it would look like for you what you're going to see. And I just made it so I had the account just for a few days. But this is a great example. So if you're a brand new site manager, you're going to have a yellow bar like what you're seeing here on my screen that's telling you you need to take the certification test. And over here on the left, I took my test last night, so I'm all done. But all you would see is this certificate of test administration. And so over here on the left, the first thing you'll need to do is click on Certificate of Test Administration. Then it's going to say take certification and you take the test. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Now, and then you all can ask questions. And Kathy, if you'll kind of watch the questions and see if I need to do something. All righty, thank you. So I'm going to click on users. This is that navigation panel that Kathy was talking about. You click on users, then manage profiles, and then site profile is right here. And this is where you get that ID number that you're going to need. I'm suspecting in the form that you're going to send to request your units. This is the ID that represents your particular site. Next, I'm going to click on user profiles. And I'm going to demonstrate how to add a new user. So when I get on user profile, over here on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a button that says add. I'm going to click add, and this pops up. And step one, I need to say, what kind of a credential do I want to make for this person? Well, I'm going to make them a Proctor reporter. And then I'm going to type in their name. I'm going to, there we go. And then type in a username for that person. Next, I'm going to expand the demographic information. I'm going to put a check mark in the use default address so it populates this. Then I'm going to put in this person's email. Next, I'll type in their phone number. And then the last thing is the calendar. And again, this is up to you how long you want someone to have access. And as Kathy shared, the maximum is 12 months. So if I click the calendar icon on the left and pick today, the calendar icon on the right and pick yesterday, and then delete the 1 and put in a 2, that's going to be 12 months. Okay? And then I can scroll to the top of the page and hit save. And if I'm successful, I'll get this green bar. And that green bar says that I created it successfully. A tip I will give you, I always like giving folks a heads up that I'm creating their credentials for them because they want to be watching for the email from AccuPlacer. The email they'll receive is only live for 24 hours. That 24 hours is how much time they have to go in and create their password. It doesn't mean they have to take their certification test in that amount of time, but they do need to have created their password. Okay, So the second part of user profile was clicking this yellow search button and then making sure that everyone in there needs to be in there. Now again, mine, I just created this account last night. So yours may have a whole lot of people in there. And again, as we shared, you may need to delete folks. So if I needed to delete someone, I could put a check mark over here and delete them. Or I can add people like I just did here. Okay. And then this is where you can do that update account active. You can put a check mark to select all, hit update account active dates, and then do the calendar like I just showed you a moment ago. I will not have anything under student profiles because there's not any data, but student profiles is here. And when you hit the search button, any students who attested in your account will come up and you are able to edit their records. Custom messages we talked about, they're located right here. There are different options. The first three, as Kathy mentioned, are appear on the student's monitor. For example, here, the student instruction message. This you might type in and say, please enter your high school ID number, okay? And you might want to make it a bit larger so that they can see it better. And if you want to preview what it's going to look like, you can click this preview button. So this would pop up on the screen for the student when they're on the page where they're entering their ID. And then if you like that, then you could save it up here at the top. The welcome message, again, here, if you don't put anything in here, this page is blank. And it can be something very short, like you're about to start your Accuplacer test. It is untimed. Take your time. Good luck. Something of that nature. And so each of these, if you wanted a message on their score report, you could put that in here as well. So those were the basic things from, and I was going to look real quickly because you'd asked which tests they're going to be giving. They've set up the arithmetic, the reading, and the writing for you. So you'll have these different options.
We'll want to check if those are still current. So we'll add that to the FAQ. There was a question, how will we get answers to the SDE questions? Because we've said many times we need an answer from SDE. And there's a note was made that we will, that SDE is going to put together an FAQ and that will be sent out within the next few days. Another question was, because I want to be mindful of the time, Deb,
Yep.
Do we add students in the student profiles tab? For test administration, we're going to have a separate, how can you do that? And that will be during the proctor training. So hopefully you'll be able to attend that or listen to the recording. And then another question, how long is student data available? Will we see student scores from 2 years ago? And yes, you will. Scores are kept for, data is kept for 5 years within the Accuplacer platform. So if a student tested within the last 5 years, you will see that.
And then before, because we have about 5 minutes max here, I wanted to show you this student portal right here. And again, you don't need any logon, just go to accuplacer.org. They click on information for students. And then here is the practice resources. And students can click on this big blue box and create their account and go in and practice. There's also pencil paper PDFs of sample questions that they can download if they would like to do that. Those are there as well. Anything else, Kathy, you feel like I should show?
I think if you could just click real quick on where the companion, the print on demand materials, just so that they can see that it's within their account.
Okay. So if you have a student that needs pencil paper version, you'd be logged in with your site manager credentials. Over here on the left, it says companion processing, and then materials. There's a whole variety of steps. This is you're letting us know that you're going to keep these live questions secure. And it is, like we said, print on demand. We have large print and regular print, and there's 2 versions, a Form K and a Form J for each test. So if you had a large student that needed large print reading, you could click right over here. It is password protected, so you need to copy that password, hit download, put in the password, and there is your test booklet. And we will be doing trainings about this, so be aware that those might be available, or if it comes up and you have questions, you'll have our contact information and you can reach out, and either of us are happy to walk you through the process. Anything else, Kath?
I just want to thank everyone for taking time. I know you're all, our days are crazy busy these days, and so we just really appreciate you taking the time. If you have any questions, if we didn't, you think of something afterwards, like I said, there are no crazy questions. Our contact information is located within the PDF that you'll be able to download in the handout section. And so please reach out with any questions and we're happy to help. The next one that we'll be doing, the proctor training, we'll talk a little more about test administration during that one. So if you can attend, we encourage you to do so. And if not, that will be recorded as well, so you could look at it at your convenience. And I think that's it. Anything from Randy or Taylor, do you have any last things you'd like to add?
Hi, this is Randy. Yeah, I answered a couple of those questions. Sorry, I had to look up a couple of the things. The date, though, we do have a window for when the AccuPlacer can be provided, and that's from February through June 30th. So we do have that all of that time that we can allow districts to give that assessment. And then there was one question I did write answers in the question box, but the other big question was does this replace the SAT? And as long as IEP teams meet and determine that that is the most appropriate assessment, then AccuPlacer can meet that college entrance requirement for graduation. And I think those were the 2 big questions that I answered.
Very good. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And just reach out if you have any questions at all.
Bye.